Quick question. Name an Apollo mission. I'll wait. You said 11. Statistically, you said 11. Maybe 13. If you've been near a television in the last 30 years. Possibly 1 if you've been listening to this series. And if you said 8, you get bonus points, and also, I'm impressed. Today, we're talking about the one nobody names, Apollo 12 and Apollo 14. 2 missions that successfully landed on the moon, completed their objectives, returned safely to Earth, and have spent the last 50 years being the answer to a trivia question nobody asked. They deserve better.
Apollo 12 was struck by lightning, twice, 36 seconds after launch. Apollo 14's commander was a 47-year-old man who had been grounded for 9 years with an inner ear condition, had secret surgery to fix it, wrangled his way back into the astronaut rotation, and then smuggled a golf club to the moon.
These are not boring missions. Welcome to Time Tellers. I'm Renee.
And I'm Dan, the forgotten one.
Who deserve to be remembered.
Before we get into the missions themselves, I want to spend a moment on the context, because Apollo 12 and 14 both happened in the shadow of Apollo 11, and that shadow shaped how they were received at the time and how they've been remembered since.
The expectations problem.
The expectations problem. Apollo 11 was an event of such historical magnitude that almost nothing could have followed it without feeling anticlimactic. 500 million people watched Armstrong step onto the moon. The networks had live coverage. World leaders issued statements. It was, by almost any measure, the most watched single moment in human history. Apollo 12 launched 4 months later in November of 1969. The networks were not carrying live coverage. The news cycle had moved on. Americans had been to the moon. This was, in the public mind, more of the same.
Which is completely insane when you think about it. Going to the moon had become more of the same in 4 months.
The human capacity for normalizing the extraordinary is genuinely staggering. And this pattern would continue. By Apollo 13, the live mission transmissions had been dropped from network schedules entirely. The producers thought nobody was watching. They were right.
Until Apollo 13 became a survival story, and then suddenly everyone was watching again.
Well, we'll get to that in the next episode. Sorry. The point is, Apollo 12 and 14 existed in a media environment that had already decided they were follow-ups, and that context shaped how they'd been understood. But the missions themselves, especially 12, were anything but routine.
Dun, dun, dun.
November 14th, 1969. 4 months and 25 days after Apollo 11, Cape Kennedy, Florida. The weather's terrible, gray skies, low clouds, wind. The kind of November day that makes you want to stay inside with coffee. But coffee is disgusting.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
I drink it every day, like
We know.
3 or 4 cups.
The crew, Pete Conrad as commander, Alan Bean as lunar module pilot, and Dick Gordon as command module pilot. The crew is significant because Conrad and Bean are the anti-Armstrong and Aldrin. Where Armstrong was quiet and understated and almost painfully serious, you see, Conrad was loud and funny and 5'6" and did not take himself seriously at all. He was a naval aviator who had been passed over for the Mercury program because the psychologists thought he was too irreverent. That was apparently not considered a disqualifying characteristic for Gemini and Apollo.
Passed over for Mercury for being too funny. Ended up walking on the moon anyway.
Do you have that meme ready? You should.
I don't know what meme you're talking about.
You need to make a meme that says that.
Okay.
A picture of him and...
Okay. That's not a bad idea. You can use it for the cover of this.
And we could go viral with it. Persistent pays off. Alan Bean was similarly warm and funny and also, by his own later account, profoundly changed by the experience of going to the moon in ways that took him years to fully process. After Apollo, he left NASA and became a painter. He is, as of this recording, the only person to have walked on the moon and then pursued a career in the fine arts. Every painting he's made since uses actual lunar dust mixed into the pigment.
Okay, like he has a little extra bonus supplies. He paints with moon dust. I mean, not everybody gets to do that. Just say.
He brought samples of the patch he wore on his suit to the moon and used flakes of the actual material. Every painting contained something that was on the lunar surface.
That's so beautiful. Okay, the launch.
President Nixon is at the Cape for the launch, the first sitting president to watch a crewed launch live. Despite the weather, the decision is made to go at 11:22 a.m. Eastern. The Saturn V ignites. Pete Conrad's voice during ascent, "It's a lovely liftoff. It's not bad at all." Very cool, very naval aviator. 36 seconds after liftoff, the rocket is struck by lightning.
No!
The Saturn V, traveling upward through a cloud layer, had been gradually building up an electrostatic charge. The rocket itself, plus the ionized exhaust plume extending below it, had essentially created a lightning rod 8 miles long. The cloud discharged through it. In the spacecraft, all 3 fuel cells trip offline simultaneously. The entire electrical system flickers.
Mm-hmm.
Multiple warning systems activate at once. Instruments go dark, then came back wrong. And in mission control, where there are about 300 people are watching telemetry from the spacecraft, every single data feed either drops out or goes haywire.
In the middle of a launch.
In the middle of launch, the rocket itself is fine. The Saturn V doesn't need the spacecraft's electrical system to keep flying during first stage burn. It's guided by its own internal system. But the spacecraft is in an unknown state, and the crew has no idea what's working and what isn't. Why isn't this a movie?
Right?
Pete Conrad's response to all 11 warning lights coming on simultaneously,
Terrifying.
which he described later as looking exactly like a Christmas tree, was to say on the mission recorder, "What the hell was that?"
What the hell was that? 36 seconds into launch. And he probably got yelled at for cursing.
The hell was that? That's a whole bunch of stuff. A bunch of hardcore, bro. Roger, we had a whole bunch of buses drop off. That's nothing. It's nothing. I think it's... Oh, my God. I can't believe there's nothing wrong. Okay, we just lost the flop farm guy. I don't know what happened here. We had everything in the wall dropped off. I can't... There's nothing I can tell wrong, Pete. Darn almighty, what a problem. You know what it did? I know what it is. It took all the fuel cells off the line. You know what the hell did it? Man, oh, man. Wasn't that a thin energy, but Jesus. That was something else. I never saw so many lights. There were so many lights that I couldn't even read them all. There was no sense reading them because I would have just now and put it over there. Great. Could be a whole light. Oh, here's that. You're right, Slack. I think we got hit by lightning. I didn't lose you. Something took care of those girls. Don't say that.
And then he kept flying. Because what else are you going to do? The rocket is still going up, gravity isn't optional, and panicking would not help.
True.
Back in mission control, a 24-year-old flight controller named John Aaron was sitting at his console. Aaron was known in the mission control community as the steely-eyed missile man, a phrase used in that culture for someone who stays calm in a crisis. He was watching the telemetry readouts, the data feeds from the spacecraft, which had gone essentially to garbage, meaningless numbers.
Again, it's like a 24-year-old. That's like, hey, we're good.
But Aaron had seen this pattern before, once, over a year earlier during a ground test simulation. He'd seen this exact constellation of bad data. He'd looked it up afterward and found the cause. The signal conditioning electronics, a system that converts raw sensor data into readable telemetry, had lost power. And there was a fix, a switch called SCE, almost never used, that had a setting called auxiliary that could restore power to the system.
He literally remembered this from a ground test a year ago.
He'd looked it up because he was curious, not because anyone told him to. He just wanted to know what had caused the bad data pattern. And now, with Conrad and Bean in a crippled spacecraft 36 seconds into launch, John Aaron keyed his comm to flight director Gary Griffin and said quietly, as though he was ordering lunch, "Flight, try SCE to auxiliary."
So chill, so nonchalant.
Griffin passed it on to the capsule communicator, Gerald Carr. Carr relayed it to the crew. Conrad came back, "FCE to auxiliary? What the hell is that?"
Clock, is that? Try FCE to auxiliary, over. Try FCE to auxiliary. What the hell is that? Do something. FCE to auxiliary. Try the buttons. Get the buttons back in the line. So everything looks good. FCE to auxiliary. The GDC is good. Stand by.
What the hell is that? He doesn't know what the switch does, and wow, does he have a mouth on him.
Yes, that is such offensive. I'm sorry, that's the worst you've heard today.
Yeah, I wish. Actually, today was pretty chill, but
It's because everyone's afraid to talk to you because they're worried you'll get HR on them. It's an obscure backup switch. Conrad didn't know it, but being a lunar module pilot who had spent more time studying the spacecraft system manuals than perhaps any other astronaut in the program said, "I know that one." He reached up and flipped it. Data came back, mission control screens filled with good telemetry, the spacecraft electrical system began resetting. Fuel cells came back online one by one. The mission continued. Conrad broke out nervous laughter, the kind of laughter that happens after an adrenaline spike when you realize you're probably not going to die.
yay!
He laughed, by his own account, most of the way into orbit.
He lapped his way into orbit. Yay!
He absolutely did. And then they kept going, and they made it to the moon.
After being struck by lightning twice.
Twice. The second strike happened 14 seconds after the first. The investigation later determined that both strikes were triggered by the rocket's presence in the charged cloud system. The vehicle created the conditions for both.
And, very importantly, nobody died.
Nobody died. John Aaron knew an obscure switch setting from a year-old ground test. Bean knew where that switch was, and Conrad stayed calm enough to let both of those things work. The moon landing itself, November 19th, 1969, was the most precisely executed landing in the program up to that point. It has nothing to do with it being the second.
Fair point. Because it was not, the first one was not precise. Like Armstrong just said, I'm taking over. We're landing here.
The target was the Ocean of Storms, near a crater called Surveyor because Surveyor 3, an unmanned NASA probe that had landed there in 1967, was still sitting on the surface. The plan was to land close enough to walk to it and retrieve components for return to Earth.
Good plan. They were going to walk to something that had been sitting on the moon for 2 years.
And examined it. What had 2 years of exposure to the lunar environment done to it? Were materials degraded? Were there microbes? What could they learn from an object that had been sitting on the surface without any protection?
Good question.
Yeah.
That's actually a very simple, but yet probably pretty important experiment.
Yeah. The landing was so precise, Conrad put Eagle down about 535 feet from Surveyor 3 that they could see the other spacecraft through the window when they landed. Conrad described it, "Hey, there it is. There's Surveyor." He could see it from the cockpit.
And then his first words on the surface.
Pete Conrad was 5'6", Neil Armstrong is 5'11". Conrad had a bet with a journalist, Oriana Felici, a famous Italian journalist who was skeptical that NASA was scripting astronaut moon quotes, that he could say anything he wanted when he stepped onto the surface and NASA wouldn't stop it.
Oh, that's great.
He stepped off the ladder and said,
And that may have been a fall with Neil, but that's along with Ruby. But step off the pad, Buzz. Was that the profit?
That's great. He said that. That's awesome.
on the moon, on live television. He collected his $500 bet when he got home.
I bet he did. That is the funniest thing anyone has ever said on the moon, and he planned it in advance, which kind of makes it even better.
They spent 31 and a half hours on the surface across 2 moonwalks. They walked to Surveyor 3 and found the camera, some tubing, and some aluminum in surprisingly good condition despite 2 years of exposure. They found evidence of microorganisms in the camera, but these turned out to be Streptococcus mitis bacteria that had survived the original launch contamination, not moon microbes. So they contaminated the moon.
I was going to say, is that strep? Like strep, like we get strep throat? Is that the same word? Yeah.
It's the same type of bacteria.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's specifically that one, but the dream of moon microbes died with that analysis.
So no moon germs. A sad day for science fiction.
That's because Earth germs killed them all.
Yeah, just like the European germs killed the Native Americans.
Huh?
A lot of them.
A relieving day for everyone else. They brought back 75 pounds of samples. They deployed the first Apollo Lunar Surface Experiments package, a set of scientific instruments that would continue sending data back to Earth for years. And they came home. Both men. Perfect mission execution.
The mission nobody talks about. Apollo 14 is a comeback story in multiple senses, and I want to spend some time on the human story of it before we get to the golf. because the human story is genuinely extraordinary. In golf, not so much. Anyways, the most important context. Apollo 14 was the mission that came after Apollo 13. Oh my gosh. They're really working hard with those names. After the explosion, after the 4 days of survival in a crippled spacecraft, after the whole world watched 3 men almost die 250,000 miles from Earth, the pressure on NASA to get it right, to demonstrate that what happened to 13 was fixable and that the program was sound and that it could continue was immense.
They spent 10 months between Apollo 13 and 14 investigating, retesting, redesigning the oxygen tank assembly that exploded on 13 was replaced with a redesigned system. Backup procedures were added, new abort protocols were written. The program was as ready as it had ever been when Apollo 14 launched on January 31st, 1971.
And the man they put in command was Alan Shepard, the first American in space, Mercury astronaut, one of the most celebrated figures in the program's history, and a man who had not flown in space for 9 years. Shepard had been diagnosed with Meniere's disease in 1964, an inner ear condition that causes severe vertigo and would disqualify him from flight. He was grounded. He became chief of the astronaut office, which is an important administrative role, but it's not the same. He watched his colleagues fly. He watched the Mercury program end and Gemini begin and Apollo prepare. He watched everything he'd worked for proceed on without him.
For 9 years.
For 9 years. And then he found a doctor in Los Angeles, Dr. William House.
Dr. House.
Just like the TV show. Who had developed a relatively new surgery procedure for Meniere's disease, an indrolapic shunt, a drain inserted in the inner ear to relieve pressure. Shepard had the surgery in secret without telling NASA because he wasn't sure it would work, and he didn't want to compromise his position if it didn't. It worked. He went back to NASA's flight surgeons, passed his medical test, and at the age of 47, the oldest person ever to fly an Apollo mission, was assigned to command Apollo 14. Now that's a comeback story.
There's a moment before the mission that his fellow astronauts have described. Shepard is suited up, preparing to launch. He's 47 years old. He's been waiting 9 years for this. He goes to the window of the suit-up room and looks out at the Saturn V on the pad, and he starts to cry.
He cried.
Alan Shepard, who by every account, one of the most controlled, least emotionally expressive figures in the astronaut corps, the man they called the Icy Commander, cried looking at his rocket.
Good. He should have. He earned it.
But that's not his rocket.
You can't see it right now, but my eyes are rolling.
I couldn't see it either, so she's lying. His first words on the moon, "It's been a long way, but we're here." Given that it had been literally 9 years of waiting and 1 inner ear surgery and a very specific kind of quiet stubbornness that most people would have broken under, those 6 words hit differently.
And then the Gulf.
And then the Gulf.
Okay, the Gulf. This is a fun story, and I want to tell it properly. Alan Shepard was a serious golfer. Not a casual weekend golfer, a serious golfer. He played regularly and thought about it carefully and spent time on courses the way some people spend time reading. And at some point in the months before Apollo 14, he had an idea. He went to a man named Jack Hardin, a golf pro in Houston who was a friend, and described what he wanted. He wanted a 6-iron head that could be attached to the end of a sample collection tool. The tool already existed. It was a collapsible handle used for collecting lunar soil samples. He wanted to be able to snap a 6-iron head onto the end of it. Hardin made it. Shepard smuggled it onto the aircraft in a sock.
He hid the golf club head in a sock and put it in his spacesuit pocket.
He hid the golf club head in a sock. We're just going to say this a couple times, apparently. He also smuggled, you guessed it, 2 golf balls. And he got informal permission from Deke Slayton, the director of flight crew operations and the man who made astronaut assignments with the understanding that he would only do this if everything on the mission went perfectly, and he did it at the very end, so it couldn't jeopardize anything. Everything went perfectly. So on the last day on the surface, with the cameras running and mission control watching, Alan Shepard announced to the world, "Houston."
Yeah, you might recognize what I have with my hand is the handles for the ample return. I just still have to have a negative 6 iron in the bottom of it, but left hand I have a little white pellet that's made of nice and American. Just up and down. Just watching the sentence so stiff I can't do this with 2 hands, but I could try an old sand trap shot here. They got more dirt than balls. More dirt than ball. Here we go again. That looks like a twice to me, Al. There we go. 3 at a time. One more. Miles and miles and miles. Very good now. And answer that question earlier there. Kilo, what reaction for the window cockpit? So yeah, how to bring it back.
They're on the moon. They can't help it. They're like, you suck.
Yeah.
From Mission Control, Fred Hayes, who survived Apollo 13, is now safely on the ground, calls up, "That looks like a slice to me, Al." Shepard drops a second ball, takes another one-handed swing. The ball actually launches. It goes, by Shepard's immediate estimation on the broadcast, miles and miles and miles.
It went approximately 40 yards.
Miles. It went approximately 40 yards. He is a golfer. He knows how far a golf shot goes. He was having the time of his life, and honestly, I can't blame him.
The 2 golf balls were photographed from lunar orbit by the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter in 2021 by researcher Andy Saunders, who had done extraordinary work recovering and enhancing Apollo photography. The balls are still there. They're visible from orbit, sitting in the lunar dust 40 yards apart. Exactly where a 47-year-old astronaut with an inner ear shunt and a 6-iron head had he hit a sock put that.
That's like so cool that they're still out there. Those golf balls are going to be there for longer than any civilization on Earth has ever existed. Long after every record of Alan Shepard is gone. Long after every record of humanity is gone. There will be 2 golf balls in the ocean of storms.
That's either beautiful or absurd, depending on your philosophical disposition.
Why not both?
I want to make sure we talk about something from Apollo 14 that gets completely overshadowed by the golf and the Shepard comeback story, because it's actually one of the most dramatic near misses in the whole program.
The abort switch.
The abort switch. During the final stages of preparation for the landing, when Eagle had already undocked and was heading toward the surface, Mission Control discovered that the abort switch was malfunctioning. Specifically, the switch that would normally trigger an abort of the landing was randomly and intermittently sending an abort signal to the computer.
Meaning the computer might randomly decide to abort the landing in the middle of the landing.
Exactly. If the abort switch triggered during powered descent, the computer would automatically fire the ascent engine and bring the spacecraft back up before it had touched down. The mission would be over as Shepard, who had waited 9 years for this moment, would have to go home without landing. NASA had hours to figure out what to do. They called Don Iles, a 27-year-old software engineer from
So it's
MIT,
the 20-year-olds.
who had worked on the lunar module guidance software. Iles analyzed the problem, understood what was happening at the code level, and wrote a software patch, a workaround in the guidance computer's programming that could tell the computer to ignore any abort signals that came in during the descent phase.
He wrote it in a few hours.
He wrote it in less than 2 hours. And then the crew had to manually type the patch, a sequence of commands, into the guidance computer's keyboard while preparing for landing, while Shepard was sitting there having waited 9 years for this.
They typed it into a software patch from Earth while preparing to land on the moon.
They typed it in, the patch worked, the abort switch was effectively neutralized, and they landed, precisely right on target.
Don Iles, 27 years old, 2 hours, saved the landing.
Another young engineer staying late doing the work, saving everything. The pattern repeats.
The average age in mission control during Apollo 11 was 26. The average age of the people who saved the moon program repeatedly on the fly seems to be about the same.
Next episode, Apollo 13, the one where everything goes wrong and somehow they came home anyway.
I've been looking forward to and also dreading this one. Keep asking questions.
And keep looking up.
And keep listening to us on Time Tellers. Bye.